Nicole Kidman warned Keith Urban for years that their marriage was in trouble. She warned him in interviews, in ultimatums, and finally, through custody papers that gave her 306 days with their daughters, and him only 59. Keith Urban ignored every warning until it was too late. Before Nicole even married Keith, his ex-fiancée tried to warn her it wouldn't last. For 19 years, Nicole fought to prove that warning wrong. But by summer of this year, Nicole stopped fighting and started filing legal papers that made one thing clear: she'd been telling Keith exactly what would happen, and he chose to let it happen anyway. To understand how Nicole Kidman spent years warning Keith Urban about their impending divorce, you have to understand what she was trying to save, and why she fought so hard for something that was already lost. Nicole and Keith married in Sydney in June of 2006. Nicole was coming off a very public divorce from Tom Cruise. She'd spent 5 years rebuilding her life and career. Keith represented her second chance at love, her proof that she could build something lasting. For 19 years, they became the couple everyone believed in. They survived Keith's addiction and rehab intervention just 4 months into their marriage. They built a family with 2 daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret. They navigated 2 superstar careers, Nicole becoming the highest-paid actress in the world, Keith dominating country music. When Keith gave his tribute speech at Nicole's AFI Lifetime Achievement Award ceremony in April of last year, he brought her to tears, talking about how she chose love when he went to rehab. The world saw a love story that had overcome impossible obstacles. But what nobody realized was that Nicole's tears at that ceremony weren't just about gratitude for their past. They were grief for a marriage she already knew was ending. Because by that point, Nicole had already been warning Keith for years that unless something changed, she would leave. And this past September, after Keith ignored every warning she gave him, Nicole filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Before Nicole ever said "I do" to Keith Urban, someone tried to warn her about exactly how this would end. And 19 years later, that warning reads like a prophecy. Nicole spent 2 decades trying to prove wrong. Laura Sigler was a Nashville veterinary technician who dated Keith Urban for nearly a decade and was even engaged to him before Nicole entered the picture. Back in 2006, just as Keith and Nicole's relationship was becoming public, Laura gave an interview that should have changed everything. According to reports at the time, Laura said the relationship wouldn't last very long. She described Keith as charming and magnetic, someone who could talk a good game, but she also spoke about darker aspects of his personality, his struggles with addiction, his pattern of wanting more than what he had. At the time, those words seemed like bitter ex-girlfriend talk, the kind of comment that people dismiss as jealousy. But Laura wasn't speaking from bitterness. She was speaking from experience with a man she'd spent nearly 10 years trying to understand. Nicole ignored that warning. She married Keith anyway, believing her love could be different, that she could be the one who finally made him settle down. And for 4 months, maybe she believed it was working. Then Keith entered rehab, and Nicole got her first real understanding of what Laura had been trying to tell her. But by then, Nicole was already committed. She'd already chosen him. And she spent the next 19 years trying to prove that the ex-fiancé was wrong about Keith Urban. But some warnings are just prophecies on a delay. And every warning Nicole would give Keith over the next 2 decades echoed what had been tried to tell her. Back in 2006. The first public warnings Nicole gave about the state of her marriage came disguised as romantic stories that, when you look closer, revealed deep cracks in their relationship. Back in 2016, Nicole gave an interview to CBS Sunday Morning about her father's death 2 years earlier. She told a story that was framed as evidence of Keith's devotion. Her father had just died in California, and Keith was about to perform a concert in Nashville. Nicole called him in distress, and Keith walked off stage, got on a plane, and flew 6 hours back to be with her. At the time, everyone heard that story as proof of Keith's love. But listen to what Nicole actually said. She framed her grief as something she literally couldn't survive without Keith. That's not partnership, that's dependency. And it reveals a pattern where Nicole needed Keith to abandon his professional commitments to provide emotional support. She apparently couldn't find anywhere else. But there's another side to that story nobody talked about. Keith walking off stage before a concert means leaving fans who paid for tickets, disappointing a venue, potentially breaking contracts. It's a grand romantic gesture, but it's also Keith once again prioritizing drama over responsibility. And Nicole knew that. Even as she told the story as evidence of devotion, she was actually revealing the fundamental problem in their marriage. Keith would show up for crisis moments, but couldn't maintain the steady, boring, everyday commitment that long marriages require. Around that same time, Keith told CBS that meeting Nicole wasn't life-changing, it was life beginning. But notice the past tense. Life beginning, not life continuing, not life thriving. As if the best part of their relationship was already behind them, just 10 years in. These early interviews show Nicole starting to drop hints that their marriage required constant, dramatic gestures to survive. Neither of them seemed capable of just being together without the performance. By last year, Nicole stopped hiding behind romantic framing and started giving direct warnings that her marriage was in trouble. The question is whether Keith was paying attention or whether he'd already checked out. At the premiere of her Netflix series The Perfect Couple last year, Nicole was asked about the title and whether it applied to her and Keith. Her response was immediate and pointed. "You're heading for trouble if you consider yourselves the perfect couple. I'm not a believer in perfect." That's not a casual observation. That's a direct warning. Nicole was telling the world and Keith that the perfect couple narrative they'd built was dangerous, unsustainable, and heading for disaster. She was diagnosing the problem. Their marriage had been built on an image rather than a foundation, and that image was cracking. Then came Keith's tribute speech at Nicole's AFI ceremony last April. Keith stood on stage and told the story of Nicole saving him from addiction 4 months into their marriage. He talked about how Nicole pushed through every negative voice and chose love. The audience applauded. Nicole cried. Everyone thought they were witnessing a beautiful celebration of enduring love. But look at Nicole's face in that moment. Imagine watching the man you love turn your love story into a past tense speech. Those aren't tears of joy, they're tears of grief. Because Keith was talking about how Nicole chose love, as if that choice had already been made and completed. He wasn't promising to choose her back. He was thanking her for a decision she'd made nearly 2 decades ago, without acknowledging what he'd failed to do for her. By December of last year, Nicole stopped being subtle. She told The Hollywood Reporter about their family routine, trying to have breakfast and dinner together, but then admitted something chilling. "How do we do it? I'm kind of not sure." That's not uncertainty about logistics. That's Nicole admitting publicly that she didn't know how to make her marriage work anymore. She was literally telling the world, "I don't know how we're managing this," and hoping someone, especially Keith, would hear it as the warning it was. By this past summer, Nicole's warnings became increasingly desperate and public. She was no longer dropping subtle hints. She was practically screaming that the marriage was ending, and Keith still wasn't listening. This past June, they celebrated their 19th wedding anniversary. Nicole posted a black and white photo of them embracing with the caption, "Happy anniversary, baby," followed by a heart and tagging Keith. It looked like a standard celebrity anniversary post. But Keith's response revealed everything. He commented a single heart emoji, that's it, no post of his own, no romantic caption, no tribute to 19 years together. Just an emoji acknowledging Nicole's post existed. The asymmetry is devastating. Nicole still trying to maintain the public image of their marriage with romantic photos and heartfelt captions. Keith offering the bare minimum, a single emoji that requires zero effort or emotional investment. That anniversary post wasn't celebrating their marriage. It was Nicole warning Keith that she was still trying while he'd already given up. 1 month later, in July, Keith did an interview with Ryan Seacrest that became painfully awkward. Seacrest was praising Nicole's career, noting she was in everything. A family affair, baby girl, the perfect couple, the upcoming Practical Magic sequel, Big Little Lies Season 3. Keith's response? He joked that Nicole was almost as busy as Seacrest. Then when Sherrick Sprout asked how they navigate life as working parents, Keith had no answer. He just nodded along uncomfortably, unable or unwilling to engage with questions about their family life. That interview revealed Keith's complete emotional distance from Nicole and their marriage. He couldn't talk about their partnership. He couldn't describe how they co-parent. He could barely acknowledge her career without deflecting. But the most telling warning came in a Vogue interview with Nicole that was published in October after the divorce filing, but was conducted weeks before. Nicole was asked about life in her 50s, and her response was haunting. "How many times do you have to be taught that you think you know where your life is going, and then it isn't?" Nicole was literally telling the world that her life wasn't going as planned. She was admitting that despite thinking she knew where her marriage was headed, something had gone terribly wrong. But by the time that interview was published, it was too late. Because the warning Keith should have heeded most came not in a magazine interview, but in legal documents signed in late August. The most serious warning Nicole gave Keith didn't come in interviews or social media posts. It came in the form of a parenting plan that Keith signed this past August, giving Nicole 306 days per year with their daughters and himself only 59 days. Think about what that custody arrangement represents. Keith wasn't forced to sign that agreement. This wasn't a judge imposing terms after a contentious battle. Keith voluntarily agreed to have his daughters less than 20% of the time. That means Nicole had given Keith an ultimatum well before late August. She told him, "Change your lifestyle, commit to this family, or lose the majority of time with our daughters." And Keith chose to sign away 306 days per year with Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, rather than change whatever he was doing that made Nicole believe he couldn't be a primary parent. What could make a mother seek that kind of lopsided custody? Keith's touring schedule made equal custody nearly impossible. He's been on the road for his High and Alive World Tour throughout this year, while Nicole filmed projects in London and Los Angeles. The distance between their careers had become the distance in their marriage. Or maybe Nicole had concerns about Keith's ability to provide the kind of stable, consistent care that teenagers need. His addiction history from their early marriage, while overcome through rehab, would always be part of their story. Signing that paper must have felt like watching the family photo fade in real time. Keith's signature on late August acknowledged he'd chosen to lose them rather than fight for equal time with his daughters. When you line up all of Nicole's warnings chronologically, they create an undeniable pattern of escalation that Keith ignored at every stage. It started before they even married. Keith's ex-fiancée tried to warn Nicole the relationship wouldn't last, that there were darker patterns in his behavior. Nicole ignored the warning and married him anyway. Just 4 months into their marriage, Keith entered rehab, confirming those early concerns about addiction. Nicole staged the intervention, proving she was willing to fight for the marriage. About 10 years in, Nicole started telling stories publicly that seemed romantic but revealed dependency issues. The story about Keith abandoning a concert to fly to her side when her father died. It sounded devoted, but it actually showed a marriage that ran on crisis rather than stability. Then last year, the warnings became impossible to miss. At her Perfect Couple premiere, Nicole said directly that believing you're the perfect couple leads to trouble. She was calling out the dangerous image they'd built. At her AFI ceremony last April, Keith gave that tribute speech about Nicole choosing love, but he spoke about it in past tense. And Nicole's tears weren't joy, they were grief that he was memorializing their love rather than continuing to build it. By December, Nicole admitted in an interview that she wasn't sure how they were managing their marriage anymore. A public confession that she was losing the battle to save them. This past June came the asymmetrical anniversary post. Nicole's romantic tribute met with Keith's single emoji response, the visual proof that Nicole was still fighting while Keith had checked out. 1 month later, Keith awkwardly avoided discussing their marriage and family in that Ryan Seacrest interview. He couldn't or wouldn't engage with questions about their partnership. By late August, Keith signed parenting documents, giving up 306 days per year with his daughters, the final acknowledgement that he was choosing his lifestyle over his family. Early September, Nicole signed the same documents. Her signature represented years of warnings, finally culminating in legal action, and at the end of September, Nicole filed for divorce. After years of warnings, she made the private reality public. The pattern is undeniable. Nicole didn't wake up one day and decide to divorce Keith. She spent years, possibly the entire marriage, warning him that unless things changed, she would leave. Each warning was louder than the last. Each warning was more public than the previous one, and Keith ignored every single one until the divorce papers were filed and it was too late to fix anything. The cruelest part of this story is that despite all of Nicole's warnings, despite all her attempts to save the marriage, Keith was the one who ultimately left. Multiple sources told media outlets that the divorce is one-sided, meaning Nicole didn't want it. One insider said Nicole had been fighting to save the marriage even after Keith moved out of their family home and into his own residence in Nashville. So let's understand what actually happened here. Nicole spent years warning Keith that unless he changed, she would have to leave. She warned him privately, she warned him publicly, she warned him through custody negotiations that stripped him of the majority of time with his daughters, and instead of hearing those warnings and fighting to save his family, Keith just left. He moved into his own place. He continued touring. He let Nicole fight alone to save a marriage he'd already abandoned emotionally. The sources say Nicole had been fighting to save the marriage, even though she's the one who filed for divorce. That means even at the end, even when Keith had moved out and signed custody documents giving up his children, Nicole was still trying to find a way to make it work. Keith didn't ignore Nicole's warnings because he didn't hear them. He ignored them because he'd already decided he didn't want to do the work required to save the marriage. In the end, Nicole didn't just warn Keith Urban about divorce. She lived through every warning sign she tried to stop. She warned him when she said, "You're heading for trouble if you consider yourselves perfect." She warned him when she admitted she wasn't sure how they were managing. She warned him when her anniversary posts got responses reduced to single emojis. She warned him in interviews when she said life doesn't go where you think it's going. And when those public warnings weren't enough, she warned him privately through custody negotiations. She told him through lawyers and legal documents. This is what happens when you don't choose your family. Keith signed those documents in late August. He acknowledged in writing that his lifestyle and choices meant he couldn't be a primary parent. He admitted through his signature that Nicole was right. Their marriage was ending, and he was the reason why. But even after signing away his family, Keith still made Nicole be the one to file for divorce. She spent years warning him. She spent months fighting to save the marriage, even after he'd moved out. And in the end, she had to be the one to make their private tragedy public, because Keith wouldn't even take responsibility for ending what he'd already destroyed. Keith's ex-fiancée warned Nicole back in 2006 that it wouldn't last. Nicole spent 19 years trying to prove that warning wrong. But some warnings are prophecies, and sometimes the person you're trying to save doesn't want to be saved at all. The question isn't whether she saw it coming, it's whether he ever cared to listen. What warning sign did you notice first? Drop your thoughts below.